Left 2 years worth of savings and documents inside a plane. A friend of mine sat on the exact same seat. On the flight back, discovered my belongings and returned it. Do you have any stories of the stars aligning and catching an incredible lucky break? I once had a friend accidentally leave her bag, with wallet, everything in the back of a taxi, and before she had realized what she was missing, the taxi had left. Not 10 minutes later, while we were still in the lobby freaking out, our other friend somewhere in the city caught the exact same taxi back to the hotel, and we were able to get the bag back. My friend and I were studying abroad in New Zealand. We went out for a night, and after a lot of drinking he realized that he had lost his passport. We spent the next hour retracing our steps, but couldn't find it anywhere. The next day, he called the US Embassy and found out that he was going to have to fly up to Auckland, fill out a bunch of forms in person at the embassy, and then put in a rush order for a new passport. It was going to take about 3 days and cost him over $1,000 to do all of it. He was in the process of booking his flight and hotel up there and checked his Facebook while waiting for the airline's page to load. There was a message on there from somebody who had found his passport in the gutter and managed to track him down on Facebook. He was literally 2 seconds away from spending some major money. Got the passport back, bought the guy a couple beers, and everything was all good. Lucky and awesome. We Kiwis are a good bunch. My grandfather lost his college class ring while swimming in the ocean off of Baja, Mexico. 3 years later he gets a phone call from a man who had found it with a metal detector. The man had called the Alumni Association and searched the records for people who had the initials RHP, which were engraved on the inside of the ring. My mom lost her favorite watch on the beach when we were on vacation in Mexico. 3 or 4 days later, we are sitting around the hotel pool and she mentions something about being bummed about the lost watch. The family sitting next to us happens to overhear. "You lost a watch? We just found one on the beach earlier today." They bring it down from their room. Lo and behold, it's the same watch. It still worked, too, despite the finish being all scratched up from tumbling around in the sand and salt water. This was probably 7 or 8 years ago. The dad of the family had a pretty sweet cheeseburger tattoo on his shoulder that I still remember. Claimed his grandfather invented the cheeseburger. TLDR. Lost watch tumbles around in the ocean for 3-4 days and is returned by a man with a cheeseburger tattoo. The man with the cheeseburger tattoo. A few years ago my brother was skiing through the woods in Killington with about 2 feet of fresh snow. At one point he falls and his phone fell out of his pocket. Unfortunately for him, he didn't notice it and continued on his way. He took the same trail on the next run, and somehow got separated from his friends on the way down the mountain. So he stopped and reached for his phone to call his friend. After realizing he didn't have his phone, he starts to get pretty pee. Then he hears a ringtone that sounds exactly like his. He started searching through the snow trying to find the source of the ringtone. Sure enough, it was his phone he heard and it was his friend calling to see where he was. My brother lost his phone in 2 feet of snow in the middle of the woods, and just happened to stop in the exact same place where he lost it. At the exact same time someone was calling his phone. Seems pretty miraculous to me. It didn't happen to me, but a friend of mine lost his wallet. He had no idea where it went. Weeks later in a shopping center car park, an elderly woman picked up the wallet and handed it over to a passerby who could probably decipher the name on the driver's license better than she could. The woman handed the wallet to his sister. What are the odds? Kinda relevant. About 5-6 years ago my mom and I were at Walmart going back to our car when mom noticed something shiny on the ground. It was a 1.5 carats diamond that my amazingly honest mother took to the police station where someone had literally just reported it missing. It was some sort of family heirloom. This fall I was on a date, walking in the park with my date and dog. As we headed back, I realized my keys were missing. I stayed calm, and my date and I easily walked 2 miles using our iPhones as flashlights, weaving through pedestrians, a drum circle, and a bunch of folks juggling, poi spinning, hooping. Desperate to get my keys back, I posted on Craigslist, but heard nothing. As a last-ditch effort, I posted to my city's subreddit, and a redditor found and returned my keys. He was one of the drum circle jugglers. I am also a juggler. Best day ever, and reward paid. I met a girl at a bar. She had a fake ID and for whatever reason showed it to me. It was my best friend's sister's ID. Her sister had never lived where we were, and I asked the girl where she got the ID. She got it from a bar near the border. We lived in Central Texas. I told my friend and she told her sister, who confirmed going to the bar and losing her ID there. That's incredibly lucky. I've got one, but it's not nearly as cool. I usually drive to campus since I live in the boonies and there are no bus stops around. One morning, for the first time all year, I parked at a friend's apartment and rode a bus to campus. I stayed on campus about 4 hours before I went to catch the bus back to my car. While waiting for the bus, I noticed a note that read something like, "Hi, I found your phone. It is in the building right next to this bus stop. Hope you find it." I thought nothing of it and proceeded to hop on the bus. I quickly realized I took the wrong bus and had to wait 30 minutes until I could get back to campus. Lo and behold, halfway through the bus route, my friend, whose apartment I parked at, ran on the bus frantically looking for his phone. He was surprised to see me and I told him about the note and explained it might be his. Evidently he had been following every bus with his car so he could ask each bus driver if they had seen it. It was his phone, of course, and we went back to the building and then he drove me to my car. Pretty random considering 1. It was the first bus I had been on all year. 2. I took the wrong bus. And 3. There's 25,000 plus people at my university. I drive to campus and I only live like 5 blocks away. I feel lazy. I blame the Texas heat. I'm an extremely stingy person when it comes to panhandling and similar acts. So maybe once every 5 years or such I'll hand change to someone asking for money on the side of the road. On this particular Monday, I had received an unexpected $5 tip from a customer at work. She handed it to me as a thank you for something or other, and since she didn't toss it in the tip jar, I was allowed to keep it. At this point in my life I was living hand to mouth and that could buy enough bread and cheese for a week's worth of meals. That $5 was a big freaking deal. I usually headed to the food line right around the corner from my house, but as I wanted to get as much food at once for as little as possible, I planned to hit up Walmart a bit farther down the road. I was sitting in the left-hand turn lane about 4 cars back, waiting for the light to change when I noticed directly next to me a homeless man. I recognized him as the guy that often slept next to the vending machines outside the food line. Suddenly, I wanted to give him that $5. I didn't really need it. I had been expecting it. Someone gave it to me. I could give it away. So I handed over my $5 and the guy begins to ramble. I was dreading a thank you and God bless, but it was not to be. The man proceeded to tell me to be careful. He stated that it looked like it was going to rain and that we all knew how FL and tourist drivers were. They never thought about how the little bit of sand often on the roads and medians would only help you to slide once the rain started and the oil slicked up. I had better be careful. I was nodding and trying to ease away before the car behind me started honking because the light had changed green. The car that had been in front of me was already through the light. I thanked the man for his warning, pulled up and turned onto the next road just as a FL shower started. Not 2 blocks down the street, a person turning into the median slid into oncoming traffic and T-boned the car that had been sitting in front of me at the light. If I had not been held back talking to the homeless man about this exact type of situation, I would have hit both of those cars and compounded the wreck. Best $5 I ever spent. TL. DR. Prophetic Hobo. Prophetic Hobo would be a great name for a band. A customer in front of me had a total of $9 even on their purchases. With different items, I also got a total of $9. I don't know, man. That seems pretty far-fetched. Not going to believe this one without any proof. This happened around Halloween time a few years ago. I was at school, just about done dropping a deuce when I noticed that my stall, the only stall in this small bathroom, was out of toilet paper. My phone was dead. No papers or anything like that in my pocket to use as makeshift toilet paper. I'm in pretty deep crap. Lulz. At this point, moments before I decide to just pull up my pants and run to the closest bathroom, a couple of douchebag kids barge into the bathroom and start chucking toilet paper into my stall, which I can only assume was some sort of Halloween prank. In any other situation, I would have been annoyed, but I was literally tearing up with joy at this glorious gift of toilet paper. The image of you sitting there with your pants down, eyes welling over as you grab fistfuls of toilet paper raining down as if from the gods, as the people outside of the stall are calling you a sucker, is just hilarious. My mom was swimming at a spring in Florida and lost the heirloom ring her grandmother had given her. A few years later, she's at a totally different spring in Florida and spies it on a scuba diver's finger. The woman was totally cool and actually returned it to her. I guess as my mom could tell her where she found it, my mom still has it to this day. Word to your mother that she shouldn't wear her heirloom ring while swimming. Not me personally, but my father told me when he was a young boy his parents took him to an amusement park. When they went on a roller coaster his father's wallet slipped out. By a crazy stroke of luck my dad caught the wallet between his feet and held it the whole ride. When I was a teenager I caught the hat of the gentleman in front of me and held onto it for the rest of the ride to give back to him at the end of the ride. When my uncle was young he and his brother went to fishing on the lake where our cabin was. My uncle had huge glasses and of course he dropped them into the lake. Searching for them was pointless because the lake is very deep and water dark as night. They went home and told my grandparents what happened. Obviously they were mad because at the time money was hard to get and new glasses would cost a lot of money. Then their neighbor came by and handed the missing glasses to my uncle. The glasses had fallen straight to his fishing net and got stuck from frame. This happened around late 60s or early 70s. Best I can do is making the stars align for someone else. I must have been 16 or 17 at the time. I was working for a grocery store and it was my turn to round up carts out of the parking lot. I was grabbing a few and noticed a wallet in the front of one. After a bit of deliberation, I opened it up and found $800 in it. I turned it in and turns out the guy who left it was stressed out and in a hurry to get going for his honeymoon. One of the best feelings in the world to know that I helped this guy keep one of the most important events in a man's life from turning into a disaster. If you wanted to prevent a true disaster, you would have caught him before the marriage. I once went to call a friend, but I misdialed his number. This was way before cell phones, back when there were payphones. Late 70s. Anyway, I dialed his home number, started talking to him about some stuff, and he stopped me and said, "Andy, what the frick? How did you know I was at the laundromat?" I really couldn't understand what was going on. After a lot of confusing back and forth, he realized the number of the payphone in the laundromat was different by one digit from his home number, and I had misdialed the laundromat by mistake, where he happened to be, and where he picked up the phone. Today I found some young university student's MacBook Pro just sitting in its case at a bus stop. No one around claimed it was theirs, so I have taken it and have contacted her via email. I am hoping she gets back to me on it. I would hate for her to lose all that work on there. I think she seems to be a law student. If she doesn't get back home by the end of the week, I shall hand it in to the police. It will just take her longer to receive if she reports the missing item to the police. Left my bag in a cab with about $5k of things in it, including laptop I used to do my work. Same cab drove past me 3 hours later, chased it down, got it back. Preface: I am an English exchange student in San Diego, visiting my friend in Philly. My friend and I went by megabus from Philly to Baltimore for a pro wrestling show. The megabus drops us off in some mall on the outskirts and we take the bus into Baltimore. We watch the show, grab a bite to eat. Good times were had by all. We travel back to the mall for the bus back to Philly, and we wait, and we wait. It approaches midnight. It's freezing. A clear Baltimore January night. And in the parking lot where we were standing a guy is watching us in his car. Naturally we start to panic as a megabus approaches, relieved we are about to get on. I ask, "This is going to Philly, right?" The man in the car has now walked up behind us. The conductor said DC. My heart sank. Here I was 3,000 miles from home in the UK, 2,000 miles from my bed in California. The guy from the car said, "You guys are going to Philly too?" He offered us a ride. He was waiting for the same bus that never came. So we drove towards Philly. Where my friend lives is a small suburb called Bridgeport, and it turns out he was going to see his girlfriend that lived a few blocks away from where my friend's house was. The wrestling theme continued as it turns out he was the cousin of Luke Gallows. Thank you, that guy. You saved me and my friend from freezing in some Baltimore mall. My mother was making a copy of a tax form at our grocery store's copier. The tax return had everything a thief would need to steal her identity. She accidentally left the original in the copier and left the store. Luckily, the next person to use the copier was my friend's mom, who recognized the name and returned the form. I went for a walk in a park one day and found a squid. I went to class the next day, look at the kid sitting next to me and realize it's Izid. I went to a school with 40k plus people, and it was a small calculus class too. In the aftermath of the First Gulf War, my grandparents had rented their house in Ibil, Iraq to the UN to be used as housing. One of the men inside the house was a UN officer and my family got to know him well. He stayed there for a couple of months before being deployed elsewhere. Months later, my parents decided to leave Iraq, so they sold everything they had and fled to Amman, Jordan. Since they did not have permission to leave, they needed to sneak through the border. However, their plans seemed to have been ruined when their bus suddenly came upon an unexpected Iraqi army checkpoint. My parents were freaking out until they see that same UN officer supervising the checkpoint. He saw my parents and lets them through. Not really good luck, but weird story like this. My girlfriend, in college, and her friends met my ex-girlfriend from high school, and her friends randomly on chat roulette and ended up talking about me for a few hours. I have met my friend on that before. It was weird. No offense original poster, but you are either lying or are stupid as heck. 6,500 cash, I would glue that to my testicles if needed be. My place was burgled once, while I was home, upstairs on the other side of a huge house. It was late on a weekend, about a block from a college campus. Some dingus just strolled in, took my Xbox and Wii, then bolted. It's 2 AM when I find the door open and my stuff gone. I call the police with little hope of getting anything back. There's a knock on the door 11 AM the next morning. It's a cop holding an Xbox and a Wii and asking that if they belonged to me. I guess the burglar got spooked and ditched his loot, which included a couple cell phones and a camera that were not mine, because someone found the stash next to their garage and called the cops. After verifying with my profile games inside the consoles, they fingerprinted the systems and I got them back right there. I don't know if I would say it was miraculous, but I felt lucky as heck. This story isn't about how the stars aligned for me, but for someone else by my hand. When I was 16, I was in a pretty crappy band, and usually played shows with other pretty crappy bands around town. We had been booked to play a show at a pretty shady bar and restaurant on the other side of town, and none of the other bands were bands I had heard of. I noticed, just before I went on and played my music, that the bass player of the band that went on before me had left his bass by the stage. I thought nothing of it, but watched it pretty closely for the entirety of our set. The guy never came back and got his bass, so I continued to watch it during the next band set, and the one following. By this time, the show was over, and nobody had come to claim the bass, so I picked it up, and went searching for the owner through what was left of the crowd. Nobody claimed it, so I figured maybe the guy had gone to get some food or something, and I was gonna wait with it for a little while to see if he came back. Finally, 4 hours after noticing the bass, the restaurant was closing, and I was the only person left in the parking lot. So I did what I could, laid the bass in the backseat of my car, and drove home. So here I was, at home with a bass that didn't belong to me. I had no idea as to who owned it, what he looked like or where he lived, only a band name to go off of. I called up a friend to come hang out for a while, and as soon as he walks into my room, he notices the strange bass. He asks me where I got it, and I have him the story behind it. He tells me he thinks he knew who owned it, and gets on the phone and called a couple people. Fast forward 20 minutes, and here I am, standing at this random stranger's house, handing him his most prized possession, which he thought had been stolen. He offered me a reward, which I turned down, simply telling him if he was ever in my position, he would do the same for anyone else. Not me, but happened to my boyfriend's parents. My boyfriend's mother was looking through an old photo album from when she went to Disney World as a kid, and recognized her father in law in the background of one of the photos, driving around a little boy who would become her husband around 20 years later. Crazy to think that they crossed paths at Disney World as kids. One of the first gifts my husband ever gave to me was this watch. What made it special was that it was an exact copy of a watch I had owned as a young child. When I had lost the first one, I was devastated, even to the point where I mentioned it to him around the time we first met. He found a copy of the discontinued watch and gave it to me. You wouldn't believe how much I loved that watch. A couple years later, I looked down one day to realize the watch was not on my wrist. I could not find it anywhere. I was almost beside myself. A couple of days later, I got a phone call from someone who had found my watch in the middle of the street. They knew it was mine. How? And were holding it for me. My watch had not been fastened properly and had fallen off outside. I could not believe I got it back. TLDR. My personally valuable watch was randomly found by someone who knew me randomly, on the ground outside. When I was only a month old, my mom put me in a car seat on the kitchen counter for all of 5 seconds, while she looked away to do something. I was a restless child, and knocked myself off the counter. I fell to the floor face first, and when my mom turned around, thought I needed to go to the hospital because she thought she had broken her child. Somehow, even though I fell face first, there weren't any bumps or bruises on me. Babies have soft skulls. Back when I was in college, I got robbed for the first time in my life. I was coming back from a party with an old friend of mine. We were slightly drunk, but not enough to mess with our memories, and we were just talking crap, laughing, etc. Then a guy comes at us and points what appears to be a gun inside his hoodie, and tells us to hand over our valuables. I couldn't see his face under the pulled hood. All I could see is that he was ginger, from the reddish goatee he had. When he got our stuff and started to walk away, my friend plays stupid and pulls the guy's hoodie down. Fortunately for us, he didn't shoot. We could see his face very clearly, and he just ran away as fast as he could. And that was that. A couple of months later, during the summer, I went to visit my parents and my baby sister, who was 17 back then. Only my father is home when I get there. He lets me in, talks to me about life, how it sucks to be old, all that stuff. He also tells me my mom was coming soon with my sister and her new boyfriend, and asks me to help him scare the guy just for fun. Obviously I'm in, and I start to plan with my dad how we could mess with him. Not much later, my mom comes through the door, and behind her comes my sister and the redhead who robbed me. I'm there speechless. The guy takes a minute to recognize me, but he eventually does, and then I hu moni pluis hu br moni plis hu. Oh, you bastard. Not quite so amazing, but when I was younger, I was with my family holidaying near the river. I decided one day to go for a swim, forgetting that I had my phone and my wallet in my shorts. Phone survived, but I realized my wallet had fallen out. I was pretty devastated. Had my birthday money in there, man. I had been swimming for a while, and over a large distance, and the wallet could have floated down anywhere along the river. It could have been kilometers away for all I knew. My auntie came over to help me look for it, and told me to shuffle my feet across the bottom of the river across the whole area I was swimming, and I might just find it. I jumped in, and was just about to start groaning that it wouldn't work, when within 2 shuffles, found my wallet. Lucky I had tons of coins and they're weighing it down. Was pretty stoked when I found it. A very good friend of mine and I had a bit of a falling out and wound up not speaking to each other for several weeks. Neither of us were planning on breaking the silence, so for all I knew, we may never have spoken again. Shortly after, I decided I needed to get the heck out of town, so I booked a flight to Vancouver for a weekend. As I wandered lazily from street to street, I decided to stop in at a Starbucks famous for having an adjacent Starbucks right across from it. I sat down with my coffee and turned my head to find that the very friend I left back in my hometown was sitting right next to me. In a city of 3.5 million people that neither of us live in, we both stared at each other in stunned silence, our minds desperately trying to comprehend the incredible odds of such a chance meeting. The grudge was immediately forgotten. You can't argue with that kind of a sign. When I was on a site inspection tour once, my boss had to fly home for an emergency meeting, and instead of getting a rental car for me, he said it was fine if I used his Mitsubishi Colt massive pickup truck. I was seriously nervous about driving it, as there are Second World War battleships with smaller turning arcs than this thing. Turns out my fears were justified when I tried to turn out of an extremely narrow parking space and scraped the front left bodywork. I got out, crapped myself, then wiped off as much damage as I could, and reattached the mudguard that had come loose. When my boss got back, I was dreading having to tell him about it, as he wasn't much of an understanding guy, and he had a massive temper. As I was contemplating just biting the bullet and telling him, he turns the corner too slow and scrapes the exact same spot on the car. Literally the exact same place. I just stood there gaping. We got out the car and assessed the damage, and I still remember him saying something about how he didn't think it had done that much damage. I even impressed him by knowing exactly how to fix the mudguard. I still laugh to myself when I think of that. What are the odds? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.